Giants. Giants are a non-human race considered to be a legend by the inhabitants of the Seven Kingdoms south of the Wall. However, giants do actually exist in the furthest north beyond the Wall, and have had some interactions with the human wildlings. This is in contrast with both the children of the forest and the White Walkers, which even the wildlings claim to not have seen in thousands of years. Culture. Giants speak a particularly rudimentary form of the Old Tongue of the first men, known as Mag Nook or the Great Tongue. Contrary to the proper Old Tongue, Mag Nook lacks any of the complex linguistic systems that any language has, as the giants simply lack the mental capacity of an ordinary human being. In fact, all polysyllabic words from the Old Tongue have been cut down to a single syllable in the Great Tongue, and the phonology has been simplified. Known giants. Mag Mar Tun Do Weg, called Mag the Mighty. King of the Giants. Killed during the Battle of Castle Black, after managing to get all the way into the tunnel through the wall. Dongo, killed during the Battle of Castle Black. One Weg One Dar One, called One One. One of the few wildling leaders who survived the massacre at Hardhome, evacuating by ship back to the wall. Killed by Ramsay Bolton during the Battle of the Bastards. Unknown female giant. Tormund claims that he once cut open a sleeping female giant and crawled into her belly. When she awoke, she mistook him for a child and suckled him for 3 months before he could finally get away, incurring the wrath of the female giant's husband in the process. On a separate occasion, hours before the Battle of Winterfell, Tormund tells a slightly different story. He killed the female giant's husband and laid with her, leading her to mistake him for her child and suckling him for the same duration described. It is doubtful whether either story is true. At least 3 unnamed giant wights. History. Giants were said to have inhabited Westeros alongside another non-human race, the Children of the Forest, with whom they periodically clashed. Like the children, much of their history and stories faded into legend over the years. According to legend, Bran the Builder enlisted the aid of giants to raise the wall. The free folk on the other hand believe he used magic to enslave them. Game of Thrones, Season 1. While visiting at Castle Black, Tyrion Lannister tells Benjen Stark that he doesn't believe that giants and ghouls and White Walkers are lurking beyond the wall. Osha asks Bran Stark if the unusually tall Hotter has some giant's blood in him after seeing him naked. Osha insists that giants actually do exist north of the wall. Game of Thrones, Season 2. Maester Luwin tells Bran Stark that many people think that magical creatures like the giants never existed at all. Luwin tells Bran that he thinks they may have once existed in ancient times, but that they have long since gone extinct. The dragons are gone, the giants are dead, and the children of the forest forgotten. Game of Thrones, Season 3. While approaching the camp of the free folk with Ygritte, Jon Snow sees a giant working. Ygritte tells Jon not to stare, as giants are very shy, but that their shyness can quickly turn into rage. She told him how she once saw a giant smash a man straight into the ground like a hammer to a nail. Game of Thrones, Season 4. Following Jon Snow's betrayal and flight from the wildlings, he reports back to Castle Black's remaining leadership that Mance Rayder is advancing on their position with an army 100,000 strong, and that he has united the Thens, Hornfoots, and the Ice River clans, and he even has giants marching with him. Janos Slynt breaks out laughing, as south of the wall giants are just a creature from stories to frighten children, but he stops when he sees that the other Night's Watch officers such as Alliser Thorne and Maester Aemon aren't laughing, but are apparently willing to give some credence to Jon if he says he saw giants with his own eyes. During the Battle of Castle Black, several giants go into battle against the Night's Watch along with the free folk. They shoot large arrows at the watchers on top of the wall, and use a mammoth to try and break down the outer gate. One of them, Mag Mar Tun Do Weg, manages to get into the tunnel leading to Castle Black, but is killed by a group of Black brothers led by Grenn. As the night ends with the wildlings momentarily retreating, Jon remarks to Samwell Tarly that among the army of nearly 100,000 wildlings that Mance has amassed, there might be hundreds of giants. Game of Thrones, Season 5. At Hardhome, One Weg One Dar One is the only known giant residing in the wildling settlement. Inside the large keep, he was seen looking at the dragonglass dagger and later got annoyed when Edison Tollett stares at him for too long. When a horde of wights and White Walkers under the Night King attack, One joined in the defense as he easily defeats many wights before covering the escape of Jon Snow, Tormund, and the few remaining defenders with a burning log from the overwhelming enemy as he walks into the sea with them and the fleet of ships boarded by wildling refugees. Arriving at the wall, 1-1 and the few thousand wildlings were allowed safe passage to settle in the gift, although the Black Brothers of the Night's Watch were intimidated at the sight of 1-1 as they have never seen a giant before. Game of Thrones, Season 6. When Jon Snow is later assassinated, 1-1 and the wildlings are summoned back to Castle Black to deal with the mutineers. 1-1 breaks down the gate at Castle Black and easily intimidates them into surrendering, killing only one mutineer after he foolishly and futilely shot the giant in the back with a crossbow. He later agrees to help a resurrected Jon Snow in his forthcoming battle against Ramsay Bolton. 1-1 participates in the battle and is inundated with dozens of arrows and pierced by spears. He falls to his knees before being shot in the eye by Ramsay after breaching Winterfell. It is unknown whether there are even a few remaining living giants left beyond the wall, as the White Walkers are seemingly destroying every last free folk stronghold, so it is possible that with 1-1's death the giants are completely extinct. Game of Thrones, Season 7. Surrounded by a snowstorm, undead giants are seen within the massive army of whites being led by White Walkers. 2 large white giants are seen within the massive army of undead whites. Once the wall has been breached, they began to march in with the rest of the White Walkers and whites. Game of Thrones, Season 8. In the Battle of Winterfell, an undead giant is seen fighting with the other whites outside of Winterfell until it is destroyed by Drogon. Another undead giant storms into Winterfell, killing several defenders. When Lyanna Mormont charges at it, it picks her up and begins to squeeze her to death, but she stabs it in the eye, killing it. Following the battle, it remains uncertain if the giants were truly extinct alongside with the whites and White Walkers. Behind the scenes, the giant costumes are actually full-body foam suits which have to be assembled around the actors. By the end of Season 4, only 2 of these expensive suits have been produced, for the giants Dongo, who first appeared in Season 3, played by Ian White, and Mag the Mighty played by Neil Fingleton. Taller people and creatures physically walk with a different gait and heft than smaller ones, due to the mechanics of their extra weight. Simply using CGI green screen effects to make an average-sized stuntman appear 20 feet tall doesn't realistically capture the mechanics of how a giant person would actually move. The TV series cast 2 of the tallest stuntmen in the UK, and with the height added from the full costume they stood a little less than 8 feet tall. Giants in the narrative are inhumanly tall, however, around 12 to 14 feet in height. They were then scaled up using CGI from nearly 8 feet to over 12 feet high, and their motions were therefore more authentic for such tall beings than digitally scaling up a 5.5-foot tall stuntman. Other subtle camera tricks were used to try to make the weight and heft of their motions actually match a 12-foot tall giant. The camera speed for the giants is very slightly slowed down, to make their movements seem more weighty. Normal footage is filmed at 24 frames per second, but giants are filmed at 30 frames per second, after which the footage is played back at the regular 24 frames per second, making them appear slightly slower. The simple technique was also used of mostly filming the giants with the camera pointing up at them, as if from a regular human's vantage point, instead of too many shots of looking down at them from the wall. Moreover, their costumes were actually designed to be disproportionately larger at the bottom of their legs than they are at the top at their heads, which combined with the camera angles makes a forced perspective shot, creating the impression that they are even larger. Other techniques were that the giants' head prosthetics are much larger than the actors' actual heads underneath. Even the giants' hands seen on screen are actually oversized gloves that fit over the, already very large, stuntman's hands. Costume designer Michelle Clapton explained her approach to creating the clothing of the giants. "I always think giants in costume look really corny. I wanted their upbringing to be different, as if as children, they were swaddled and wrapped in anything. And so on when they get bigger, they just keep wrapping and wrapping and wrapping. By the time they get to this age, they're just massively wrapped in fabrics and antlers and bones and grass. So the wrapping isn't clothes as we know them, it's protection. For me, that's what differentiates them from the wildling humans." From inside HBO's Game of Thrones, Seasons 3 and 4, pages 178 to 179, Creating the Mammoths and Giants. Joe Bauer, VFX supervisor. The giants were first developed in Season 3. The best decision was to use unusually tall performers to give a sense of a great deal of weight to the giants' movement. Ian White measures in at around 7 feet, 1 inch in height. He is a well-known suit performer in the UK, and he had been our giant before, in Season 3, as well as a White Walker in Season 1. Production then found Neil Fingleton, the tallest man in the UK, who in his suit comes in around 7 feet, 11 inches. We also slowed down the speed on screen a tiny amount. In terms of design, the idea was that we would always be looking up at them, so the costumes were deliberately made smaller at the top with big tree trunk legs at the bottom. Barry Gower, prosthetics supervisor. To get the suit, we begin by making a full-body cast. Then a fabricator created the suit by layering and piecing reticulated foam into a creation that could actually be zipped up. For Neil Fingleton's suit, we sewed in a set of his own shoes for comfort. The costumes team then dressed the foam suit, but we still needed to create a new silicone prosthetic headpiece for the second giant, Mag, which was designed from scratch. The head alone was several kilos, so they are carrying a great deal of weight when they move. I think this might help with the lumbering. Prosthetics alone takes 3 hours of application for the heads. We were eventually able to get down to around 1.5 hours, so with hair and costume the process could take between 3 and 5 hours for each of our giants. In the books. In the A Song of Ice and Fire novels, giants have a drastically different, more ape-like appearance. They tend to be about twice as large as a very tall human, about 12 to 14 feet in height, but not monstrously huge. A single giant is as strong as a dozen humans. They generally resemble descriptions of the Sasquatch, Bigfoot, or Yeti. They wear no clothing, but instead are covered in shaggy fur pelts, which are thicker below the waist. The fur of older giants becomes gray and streaked with white. Their heads are thrust forward from their shoulder blades, but they have very short necks. They have squashed-in faces with square teeth and tiny eyes amidst folds of flesh. Their eyesight is poor and they snuffle constantly, smelling as much as they see. They have sloped chests, and their lower torsos are about half again as wide as their upper torsos. Their arms hang lower than a man's, while their legs are shorter than their arms, ending in splayed feet that need no shoes even in the coldest weather. The female giants look similar to the males. Giants are generally not considered to be as intelligent as the average human, though they are sapient and capable of speech. They speak the old tongue of the first men. The giants are physically capable of speaking the common tongue of the Undulls, and can learn it after instruction. It's just that the giants live so far to the north away from the wall that they haven't really encountered the common tongue before. The giants do not have much in the way of advanced society or culture, barely possessing the most primitive Stone Age technology. They make and wear no clothing, because their pelts adequately provide all the protection they need. They do not generally possess technology more advanced than simply grabbing a large tree log and wielding it as a club. Some of them, however, are smart enough to tie large stone boulders to the end of the tree logs to make crude mauls. On a few occasions these are even sharpened to form basic stone axes. The giants ride huge mammoths as their steeds. The giants possess little if any large-scale political structure. They do not have kings, though particularly large, old and experienced giants who are veteran warriors often seem to act as basic chieftains or warband leaders. A particularly large silverback giant named Mag Mar Tun Do Weg is the prominent ringleader of the giants in Mance Raider's army. The giants inhabit the far northern regions of the lands beyond the wall, where humans will not encroach on them, perilously close to the lands of always winter. They once roamed all of Westeros, but were pushed further and further north when the first men migrated to the continent, starting 12,000 years ago. In the present day they are almost extinct, even beyond the wall. By the time Mance Raider unified all of the wildlings, there were only a few hundred giants remaining. Giants are considered entirely mythical south of the wall. Jon Snow recalls that in the nursery stories and fables old Nan used to tell, giants were basically just big people, who lived in big castles, dressed in armor like knights, and were ruled by lords and ladies. Jon is surprised when he discovers that giants survive north of the wall, not simply due to their existence, but because they do not match the legends he has heard, but are far more grounded and crude. This matches author George R.R. Martin's intent with the A Song of Ice and Fire series to deconstruct the literary tropes of high fantasy literature, in which numerous different non-human races such as dwarves or elves are actively involved in the world. Instead, non-human races are so rare in Westeros that they are commonly thought to be just the stuff of legends. However, even when Martin actually does start introducing non-human races with the giants, they are much more realistic and dirty than the kind of fantasy tropes that even Jon Snow was expecting. Jon sums up his assessment of the giants by noting that they actually kind of remind him of Hodder, the mentally challenged and incredibly tall stable boy at Winterfell. Rather, Jon notes, giants are about twice as tall as Hodder, and about half as intelligent, though unlike Hodder, they can speak a full language. There are rumors that giants eat human flesh. Old Nan used to tell stories about giants who mixed blood into their morning porridge and devoured whole bulls. At least one giant, one, does not fit those horror stories.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.